The evening wind rolled through the endless golden wheat fields like a slow, rhythmic ocean wave. The tall, heavy stalks of grain swayed in perfect unison, creating a soft, rustling sound that served as a natural, soothing lullaby for the earth. The sun was beginning its slow descent behind the distant hills, casting long, warm shadows that stretched across the rich, dark soil. The sky was a masterpiece of fading light, painted in deep shades of violet, burnt orange, and a pale, dusky pink. Every breath drawn in this tranquil space tasted of warm earth and sweet, sun-baked straw. The day's labor had finally come to an end, and the iron tools were set gently against the stone wall of the farmhouse, their wooden handles worn smooth by years of patient, steady work. It was a time for rest, a moment when the entire world seemed to exhale and slow down. The farmhouse stood as a quiet sanctuary, its windows beginning to glow with the soft, flickering light of a newly lit hearth fire. Suddenly, the rhythmic, muffled sound of horse hooves against the dirt road broke the silence, though not in a jarring way. The sound was steady, bringing a royal messenger draped in the muted colors of the king's guard. The rider approached with a slow, respectful pace, his horse breathing heavily in the cool twilight air. He carried a heavy parchment scroll, sealed with dark red wax. The message was simple and heavy. A grand siege was being laid upon Highstone Castle in the north, and every able-bodied man was called to join the king's forces. The parchment felt rough and substantial in the hand, a tangible connection to a duty far greater than the fields. There was no panic, only a deep, meditative acceptance of the changing tides of life. Walking back into the stone farmhouse, the interior was deeply comforting, smelling of dried herbs, wood smoke, and old leather. A sturdy canvas pack was laid out onto the long wooden table. The process of packing became a slow, deliberate ritual. A thick woolen blanket was folded with care, its coarse texture promising warmth during cold northern nights. A small loaf of dark rye bread, a hard wedge of sharp cheese, and a leather flask filled with fresh, cold well water were placed inside. Each item was handled with a quiet reverence, grounding the mind in the present moment rather than the uncertain future. Stepping back outside to look at the stars, the night sky had fully blossomed, an infinite canopy of glittering silver against velvet black. The vastness of the cosmos offered a profound sense of perspective, making the affairs of kings and castles feel like small, fleeting moments in the grand march of time. Retreating to the simple wooden bed, the eyes closed heavily. The mind drifted on the gentle sounds of the night wind, finding a deep, restorative sleep to prepare the body for the long road and the distant siege that awaited at the break of dawn. The journey north began long before the sun had fully crested the horizon, plunging into the heart of an ancient, sprawling pine forest. A thick, silvery morning mist clung to the forest floor, wrapping the massive tree trunks in a soft, ethereal embrace. The air was incredibly crisp and cool, carrying the sharp, invigorating scent of crushed pine needles, damp earth, and deep, ancient moss. Every footstep on the soft, needle-covered path was muffled, turning the march into a quiet, almost ghostly progression through the woods. The towering pines stood like silent, watchful sentinels, their dark green canopies filtering the pale morning light into soft, angled beams that pierced the fog like glowing pillars. The forest operated on its own slow, geological time, completely indifferent to the rushing affairs of the human world. The rhythm of walking became a form of deep meditation. The steady 1-2 cadence of boots striking the soft earth synchronized with the slow, measured pace of breathing. In through the nose, drawing in the cold, pure air of the wild. Out through the mouth, releasing any lingering tension from the shoulders and back. The mind emptied of worries, focusing entirely on the hypnotic sway of the mist and the gentle crunch of the path. A solitary raven called out from a high branch, its deep, resonant voice echoing through the misty corridors of the forest. It was a beautiful, haunting sound that emphasized the vast solitude of the wilderness. As the morning stretched on, the path led alongside a slow-moving, crystal-clear stream that tumbled over smooth, water-worn stones. The gentle babbling of the water provided a continuous, soothing soundtrack to the journey. Pausing by the stream's edge, the cool water was splashed onto the face, instantly washing away the fatigue of the miles already walked. The chill of the water was a sharp reminder of the profound vitality of life. Sitting on a mossy boulder, a small piece of rye bread was eaten in perfect silence. The forest seemed to hold its breath, offering a deep, restorative peace. A small, rust-colored fox trotted quietly across the opposite bank, pausing for a brief moment to look before vanishing into the ferns. It was a gentle reminder that life continued its quiet dances all around. Hoisting the heavy canvas pack once more, the journey resumed. The forest path slowly began to incline, signaling the approach of the northern highlands. The air grew thinner and colder, but the internal fire of purpose kept the body warm and moving. The mist eventually began to burn away under the rising sun, revealing glimpses of jagged gray peaks in the distance. The walk was a transition, a slow shedding of the quiet life of the farmer, moving steadily toward the grand, looming theater of the great castle siege, completely anchored in the serene reality of the present step. By midday, the protective canopy of the forest gave way to a vast, open, grassy plateau, revealing the sprawling expanse of the king's siege camp. Thousands of white and gray canvas tents were pitched in neat, orderly rows, resembling a sudden, quiet city that had sprouted from the earth. Despite the sheer number of men and horses gathered, there was an atmosphere of profound, heavy calm. It was not a camp of chaotic noise, but rather a place of waiting, characterized by the low murmur of conversations the rhythmic clinking of blacksmiths at their anvils, and the slow, steady grazing of heavy warhorses in the long grass. The air smelled of wood smoke, roasting meat, and the faint, metallic tang of oiled armor. Looking across the great valley from the edge of the camp, the ultimate destination finally came into view. Highstone Castle was a colossal structure of dark, weathered granite, rising from a sheer rocky cliff like a natural extension of the mountain itself. Its massive walls were impossibly thick, lined with narrow battlements and towering defensive keeps that scraped against the clouds. It looked impenetrable, a sleeping stone giant waiting patiently for the storm. Seeing the castle did not inspire fear, but rather a deep, contemplative awe at the sheer scale of human architecture. It stood as a testament to endurance, weather-beaten by centuries of storms, yet entirely unmoving. The distance softened its imposing nature, making it look almost like a detailed painting against the pale blue sky. Walking slowly through the neat rows of tents, the atmosphere was one of quiet, shared purpose. Soldiers sat around small campfires, polishing their equipment with slow, methodical strokes, or sharing simple meals from wooden bowls. The communal energy was grounding, a reminder that this burden was shared among many. Finding a small, unoccupied patch of soft grass near the edge of the plateau, the heavy pack was finally set down. Sitting cross-legged, the gaze was drawn back to the distant fortress. The sun beat down with a comfortable, heavy warmth, relaxing the muscles that had worked so hard during the long march. A soft breeze swept across the plateau, carrying the scent of wild chamomile that grew among the tents. Closing the eyes, the sounds of the camp merged into a soothing, rhythmic white noise. The distant, muffled strikes of a hammer on a forge sounded like a slow, steady heartbeat. The immense scale of the impending siege faded into the background, replaced by the simple, immediate sensation of the sun on the skin and the solid earth beneath the body. There was nothing to do now but wait. The art of waiting was a familiar friend to a farmer who understood the slow turn of the seasons. Deep, even breaths filled the lungs, slowing the pulse to match the lethargic, peaceful pace of the midday camp, finding complete stillness in the shadow of the great stone fortress. The assignment for the evening was the night watch, stationed at the very edge of the siege lines, overlooking the dark valley and the castle beyond. The night was vast and incredibly clear, the sky scattered with a brilliant dusting of stars that seemed to watch over the sleeping world. The air had turned bitterly cold, biting at the cheeks, but the heavy woolen cloak provided a thick, impenetrable layer of warmth. Sitting beside a small, carefully contained watchfire, the glowing orange embers crackled softly, sending tiny sparks dancing up into the dark air before fading away. The heat from the fire was a comforting companion in the vast, silent darkness. Across the deep expanse of the valley, the silhouette of Highstone Castle rose against the moonlit sky. It was a massive, dark cutout against the stars. Along its high stone walls, tiny pinpricks of orange light flickered, the torches of the castle's own defenders, keeping their parallel watch. Watching those distant, silent lights brought a profound sense of shared humanity. The men on those walls were doing exactly the same thing, standing in the cold, watching the dark, and wishing for the warmth of their beds. There was no hatred in the quiet of the night, only a silent, mutual understanding of the strange, slow dance of the siege. The vast, empty space between the camp and the castle felt less like a battlefield and more like a quiet sanctuary. The silence of the night was deep and oceanic, broken only by the rhythmic hoot of a distant owl and the gentle, continuous sigh of the wind sweeping through the valley gorge. This wind carried no urgency. It was the slow, steady breath of the earth itself. Standing up to stretch the legs, the muscles felt strong and responsive. The gaze drifted upward to the silver crescent moon, hanging perfectly still in the heavens. The moonlight painted the world in soft, monochromatic shades of gray and silver, turning the rugged landscape into a peaceful, dreamlike painting. The hours of the watch drifted by with a fluid, seamless grace. The mind entered a state of perfect, empty stillness. There was no dwelling on the conflict to come, nor any longing for the farm left behind. There was only the present moment, the warmth of the fire, the cold of the air, and the distant, flickering lights of the stone fortress. The act of watching became a form of deep relaxation, letting the eyes softly focus on the horizon without straining. As the deepest part of the night took hold, a profound, heavy peace settled over the spirit. The world was paused in a delicate, beautiful balance. The heavy eyelids began to droop slightly, a gentle reminder that the watch would soon end, and the deep, welcoming embrace of sleep was waiting just a few steps away in the quiet, resting camp. As dusk approached on the third day of the camp, the long, slow process of the siege officially began. Positioned safely behind the massive wooden trebuchets on the high ridge, the atmosphere was one of slow, calculated, and rhythmic motion. These giant siege engines were marvels of heavy timber, thick braided ropes, and massive iron counterweights. There was no frantic rushing or shouting. The siege engineers moved with the deliberate, synchronized grace of men pulling oars on a great ship. The fading light of the sun cast long, dramatic shadows across the machines, highlighting the rough textures of the wood and the strained tension of the ropes. The action of the siege was not a chaotic clash, but a slow, heavy, atmospheric rhythm. A deep, resonant creak echoed through the air as the massive wooden arm of the closest trebuchet was slowly winched downward. The sound was like a great tree bending in the wind, a deep, groaning vibration that could be felt in the chest. Then came the sudden, heavy thud of the release. The massive counterweight dropped, and the long arm swung upward in a smooth, sweeping arc. A massive, rounded boulder was launched high into the dusky sky. Watching the stone sail through the air was strangely hypnotic. It moved in a slow, perfect parabola, tracing a dark, silent arc against the purple twilight, hanging in the air for what felt like an eternity. Seconds later, a deep, muffled boom drifted back across the valley as the stone impacted the thick, outer defensive walls of the castle. It was not an explosive, terrifying sound, but rather a low, heavy thud, like distant summer thunder rolling over the hills. The castle absorbed the blow with ancient stoicism. The stone walls did not crumble immediately. They held firm, turning the bombardment into a slow, patient game of endurance. The rhythm established itself. The slow winching of the ropes, the deep, satisfying release, the silent flight of the stone, and the distant, muffled impact. It was a terrifyingly beautiful display of mechanical power, yet it possessed a repetitive, calming cadence. Sitting on the grass behind the lines, watching this slow-motion bombardment, the mind found a strange, contemplative peace. The rhythmic thumping of the siege engines became a backdrop, a slow metronome marking the passage of the evening. The air was filled with the smell of tensioned hemp rope and the dry dust kicked up by the machines. The sky darkened completely, and the engineers lit torches, illuminating the trebuchets in warm, flickering light. The bombardment slowed to an occasional, solitary strike in the night. The immense, slow power of the event was a reminder of the irresistible forces of time and patience. The deep vibrations in the earth felt almost grounding, a heavy lullaby that slowly coaxed the mind into a state of lethargic, peaceful observation as the stars finally emerged. The morning of the advance arrived, shrouded in an incredibly thick, pale fog that covered the entire valley floor. The great stone castle was completely hidden from view, masked by the dense, swirling white curtain. Standing in the silent formation among hundreds of other men, the atmosphere was thick with anticipation, yet uniquely calm. There was no shouting, no clashing of swords, only the soft, muffled sounds of leather shifting and deep, controlled breathing. The fog dampened all noise, turning the massive gathering into an assembly of silent gray phantoms. The air was damp and heavy, leaving small, cool droplets of dew on the woolen cloaks and wooden shields. The mind was profoundly quiet, mirroring the stillness of the shrouded landscape. In this white void, there was no past or future, only the steady rhythm of the breaths. Inhale the cool, wet fog. Exhale a slow, steady stream of warmth. The collective breathing of the men around created a soft, rushing sound, like the gentle pulling of the tide against a pebbled shore. It was a deeply unifying sound, a reminder that every man standing in the mist shared the same hopes, the same fears, and the same beating heart. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the command to move forward was passed down the line through a series of soft, low murmurs. The march toward the unseen castle began. The pace was incredibly slow and deliberate, a cautious, sliding step through the wet grass. The boots made a soft, rhythmic swishing sound. Moving through the fog felt like walking through a dream, a suspension of reality where time seemed to stretch and warp. The heavy wooden shield on the arm felt not like a burden, but like a solid, comforting anchor. As the formation pressed deeper into the valley, the massive, dark shape of the castle walls slowly began to materialize out of the fog, looming overhead like a sheer mountain cliff. The sheer size of the stones was awe-inspiring, rendering the approaching men incredibly small in comparison. Above, on the hidden battlements, the soft twang of bowstrings could be heard. But even this action seemed to happen in slow motion. Arrows descended from the fog like dark, heavy raindrops, thudding softly into the damp earth or striking the raised wooden shields with a dull, rhythmic thwack. There was no panic in the ranks, only a slow, synchronized raising of the shields, creating a protective wooden roof over the moving column. The advance continued, a slow, unstoppable tide of humanity rolling gently toward the unmoving stone. The steady, methodical nature of the approach removed the chaos of battle, replacing it with a strange, hypnotic, and deeply focused calm. The fog wrapped around the mind, isolating the senses and bringing an intense, peaceful clarity to the slow, steady march toward the great wooden gates. The slow advance finally brought the formation to the very foot of the castle, directly before the colossal, iron-banded wooden gates. Up close, the sheer magnitude of the defensive structure was staggering. The stone blocks of the wall were damp and covered in patches of dark, ancient moss, rising vertically into the sky. The fog had thinned slightly, replaced by a fine, dusty haze that caught the midday sun, casting the entire scene in a soft, golden, cinematic light. The air was thick with the smell of splintered wood, crushed stone, and the metallic tang of iron. Despite being at the very center of the conflict, the experience felt strangely distant, as if moving through a thick, invisible fluid. The focal point of the action was the massive battering ram, a huge, iron-capped oak trunk suspended by thick ropes from a rolling wooden frame. The men operating the ram moved with a hypnotic, synchronized rhythm. They pulled the massive log back together, their boots digging into the dirt, holding the tension for a long, breathless moment. Then, with a deep, collective exhale, they swung the ram forward. The impact against the heavy wooden gates produced a deafening, echoing boom that shook the ground, vibrating deep within the chest. It was a primal, rhythmic percussion. Thud. A long pause. Thud. Another long pause. The sound was incredibly consistent, a heavy, mechanical heartbeat trying to break the ancient stillness of the castle. Standing in the shield wall just behind the ram, there was nothing to do but hold the line and observe. The dust falling from the high walls drifted down in slow, glittering cascades, catching the light like golden snow. The defenders above had stopped firing, perhaps realizing the inevitability of the rhythmic assault. The chaotic energy usually associated with a breach was entirely absent, replaced by a slow, inevitable mechanical process. Watching the massive iron bands on the gate slowly begin to bend and give way was mesmerizing. The mind detached from the danger, focusing entirely on the slow, rhythmic booming of the ram and the gentle, drifting descent of the dust motes. The heavy shield resting on the shoulder provided a comforting weight. The sun warmed the back of the neck through the thick tunic. Each strike of the ram seemed to release a little more tension from the air, moving closer to a final resolution. The violence of the siege had been distilled into a slow, patient, and deeply rhythmic labor. The massive gates groaned under the continuous pressure, the sound of the wood fracturing, carrying a strange, mournful melody. The final, inevitable moment of the breach was approaching, not with a sudden explosion, but with the slow, dignified yielding of an ancient, exhausted barrier. With a final, echoing crack, the massive iron hinges of the great gates gave way, and the heavy wooden doors swung slowly inward, stirring up a massive cloud of ancient dust. The dust rolled out through the gateway like a slow, heavy wave, temporarily obscuring the view of the inner courtyard. As the sun began its descent, casting long, amber rays through the breach, the dust slowly began to settle, revealing the interior of the fortress. Stepping through the shattered gates, the boots crunched softly on the broken stone. The expected chaos and clash of steel did not materialize. Instead, an overwhelming, profound silence filled the vast, enclosed space of the outer courtyard. The castle defenders stood in the center of the courtyard, their weapons already lowered and resting gently on the cobblestones. They were not broken men, but weary soldiers who had recognized the end of a long, slow endurance. The setting sun caught the dull gray metal of their armor, painting them in warm, soft hues. The leader of the castle guard stepped forward slowly, his hands empty, offering a slow, dignified nod of surrender. The act was remarkably peaceful, a silent agreement that enough stone had been broken and no blood needed to be spilled. The tension that had hung over the valley for days evaporated instantly, drifting away like the settling dust. The air in the courtyard was cool and smelled of old stone, damp earth, and the sweet relief of a resolved conflict. Lowering the heavy wooden shield, the muscles of the arm finally relaxed, a deep, soothing sensation spreading through the shoulder. Looking around the massive courtyard, the architecture was breathtaking. Tall, slender towers reached up toward the purple twilight sky, and elegant stone arches lined the walls. It was a place of stark, defensive beauty, now completely at rest. The transition from siege to peace was incredibly swift, yet it felt as slow and natural as the changing of the seasons. Standing in the quiet courtyard, a deep, resonant wave of relief washed over the soul. The purpose had been fulfilled, the duty done, and the peace preserved. The men from both sides began to mingle slowly, the quiet murmurs of shared exhaustion replacing the rhythmic booming of the ram. Helmets were removed, revealing tired, relieved faces. The gentle evening breeze swept through the open gates, clearing the last of the dust and bringing the fresh, clean scent of the mountain air. Leaning against a cool, smooth stone pillar, the eyes closed in a moment of silent gratitude. The great stone giant had been taken without a storm of violence, surrendering gently into the quiet embrace of the gathering night. The slow, peaceful resolution was a testament to patience, an end to the long journey that brought a profound, deeply satisfying calm. With the castle securely and peacefully taken, the night brought a period of quiet watchfulness from the very top of the fortress. Climbing the ancient, winding stone stairs to the high battlements was a slow, meditative journey upward. Each smooth, worn step was a reminder of the countless feet that had walked this path over the centuries. Emerging onto the wide, flat walkway of the high wall, the sheer altitude provided a breathtaking, sweeping view of the entire world below. The night air was incredibly crisp, pure and biting, instantly clearing the lungs and sharpening the mind. A gentle, continuous wind hummed through the stone crenellations, a soothing, melodic drone that sounded like the deep breath of the mountain. Looking down, the valley was a sea of absolute darkness, dotted only by the warm, tiny, flickering orange lights of the siege camp far below. Those small fires looked exactly like the stars scattered across the immense, black canvas of the sky above, creating an illusion of floating, suspended in a vast, glittering universe. The great trebuchets were now nothing more than silent, dark shadows, their work finished. The sheer, overwhelming silence of the height was magical. It was a silence so profound that the beating of one's own heart became the loudest sound in the world, a slow, steady, reassuring rhythm. Walking slowly along the stone path, the hand gently brushed against the cold, rough granite of the defensive wall. The stone held the chill of the night, a grounding, solid sensation that connected the body directly to the ancient fortress. The mind expanded to fill the vast, open space of the night. There were no thoughts of the march, no lingering echoes of the battering ram, only a deep, pure existence in the present moment. The moonlight bathed the stone in a soft, silvery glow, transforming the battlements into a luminous, peaceful pathway in the sky. Leaning gently against the stone parapet, gazing out over the sleeping world, a profound sense of closure and serenity settled into the bones. The conflict had dissolved into this beautiful, encompassing quiet. The men in the camp below were sleeping safely. The defenders within the walls were resting, and the land was completely at peace. The vastness of the landscape provided a comforting reminder of the smallness of human struggles against the magnificent backdrop of nature. The cold air kept the senses perfectly balanced, preventing any drowsiness from taking over just yet, allowing for a full, deep appreciation of this majestic solitude. It was a sacred, silent moment of victory, not over an enemy, but over chaos, a gentle surrender to the absolute, unwavering tranquility of the high mountain night. The long journey back from the northern mountains felt like a gentle, slow unwinding, culminating in the familiar sight of the golden wheat fields at dusk. The return was marked by a deep internal lightness, a shedding of the heavy armor and the tension of the siege. Walking up the dirt path toward the stone farmhouse, the fading sunlight cast a warm, golden glow over the familiar landscape. The wheat swayed exactly as it had upon departure, a beautiful, continuous cycle that remained entirely unbothered by the events of the distant world. The heavy canvas pack on the shoulders felt significantly lighter now, its purpose fulfilled. The air was thick with the incredibly sweet, nostalgic scent of the home soil, a fragrance that instantly relaxed every muscle in the body. Pushing open the heavy wooden door of the farmhouse, the familiar creak of the iron hinges felt like a warm, verbal welcome. The interior was perfectly still, holding the quiet, patient energy of a home waiting for its keeper. A few glowing embers still rested in the hearth, casting a very faint, deep red light across the rough-hewn floorboards. Adding a small, dry log to the coals, the fire slowly caught, blooming into a soft, golden flame that illuminated the simple, comforting room. The shadows danced slowly across the stone walls, creating a cozy, intimate atmosphere. The thick woolen cloak and the heavy boots were removed with slow, deliberate movements, each piece of gear set aside with a sense of finality. The physical relief of sitting down in the old, comfortable wooden chair beside the fire was overwhelming. The heat from the hearth radiated outward, seeping into the tired legs and back, melting away the lingering chill of the mountain nights. Looking into the slow, hypnotic dance of the flames, the mind finally let go of the long march, the massive stone walls, and the distant valley. All that remained was the profound, beautiful simplicity of being home. The silence here was different from the silence of the high battlements. It was a soft, wrapped, insulating silence that promised safety and unconditional rest. Moving slowly to the heavy wooden bed in the corner of the room, the thick quilts were pulled back. Lying down, the mattress supported the exhausted body perfectly, a soft, yielding embrace that felt like sinking into a cloud. The eyes grew heavy, the flickering light of the fire painting soft patterns on the inside of the eyelids. The rhythmic, gentle sound of the wind rustling the wheat outside the window became the perfect, natural lullaby. Every breath slowed to a long, deep, and incredibly peaceful rhythm. The world outside faded away completely, leaving only warmth, safety, and the deep, heavy comfort of the bed. The mind drifted down, further and further, slipping effortlessly into a dark, dreamless, and profoundly restorative sleep.